Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people's side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. Okay, let's get started with this episode's Quickfire 5. Playlist or podcast?
Podcast.
Call or message?
Call?
Face-to-face or virtual?
Definitely face-to-face.
Is it lunch or dinner?
Well, here it's dinner.
And operator side or supplier side?
We'll go with supplier.
We tried to trip you up a little bit there, but those listening will probably be aware that today we're talking to Rafe Britton. Rafe, thank you for joining us. Welcome along. How are you today, and how are things down under?
Yeah, good. It's hot, probably compared to where most of your listeners are. If they're in, obviously, North America, kind of Europe, you guys will not be experiencing the same kind of climate conditions that we are over here. So we just had a day that was 40 Celsius during the day, and Sydney's not even the hottest part of Australia, right? So it was brutal, actually. And then obviously we just had Christmas, so it was nice to get a bit of downtime, do time with the kids. It's always fun. We've always got a ton of family events as well. So not only do we have Christmas, we have multiple Christmases for both sides of the family, but then my wife's family had the what do you say, the poor manners and the poor taste to have all of their birthdays between December 13 and January 6.
How dare they?
So we do all of the events at the same time. I once actually suggested, some of these birthdays are so close why don't we kind of combine some of these? And I got in very, very hot water over that one, because it turns out, but no matter how old they are, they still got a chip on their shoulder about being so close to Christmas. So anyway, but no, it was really good. It was nice. I think Christmas is so exciting when you're little, and then it becomes more about like family connection. But then you have kids, and it goes back to the excitement, and you kind of live vicariously through them again. So
yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, we were talking just briefly off air there, weren't we, about how that magic, it might leave you, but yeah, we got kids of similar age, 10, 8, 6, and newborn for me. So it's I've got a few more Christmases in me yet where I can still be that little kid running downstairs. But I think,
yeah, exactly.
I can't imagine that winter time in 40 degrees. It's unbelievable when you're expected to be snuggled up in a dressing gown and slippers, not shorts and flip-flops. Must be.
Yeah.
Well, it's not strange because it's where you live, but for an outsider looking in from the West, it's very, very odd.
Yeah. I find it crazy that some people still insist on having like the traditional European Christmas meal. So they'll put the oven on, and they'll insist on making roast lamb or big roast pork or something like that, and you just think this is nuts. Like, it's 36, 38 degrees outside, and we've got the oven on. Like, this is insanity. Fortunately, so my mum's side of the family, they're from Indonesia, and so it's more kind of climate friendly food.
Yeah, crazy. It's a strange time, but hey, I wanted to touch on the one of the Quickfire 5 that you answered there, playlist or podcast. You answered podcast, so tell me what's on your headphones recently. What podcasts are catching your ear?
Yeah, good question. I listen to a whole bunch. I am one of those people who incessantly listen to podcasts, so I don't really listen to music. I'm one of those weird people that doesn't really have music taste. And so I spend all my time listening to podcasts. And I've been listening a lot lately. So I had back surgery late last year, and part of the rehab is I have to walk a lot. So I walk in the morning, I walk, if it's not too hot, I walk at midday, and then I walk again in the evening. And so while you're burning through the miles, all I'm doing is just listening to podcasts on like 2.5 speed. And so you get through a lot of hours. It's a combination of different stuff. So some industry things, all right? So I've obviously listened to a couple of episodes of this very podcast. F&L do a pretty good one. But then, just other stuff that sort of catches my interest. So what is there? There's the Pivot podcast. I don't know if you've come across with Cara Swisher and Scott Galloway. They kind of
I
talk.
haven't, but I'm always keen to learn what people are listening to. Right?
Yeah, that kind of thing. The All In podcast, that sort of like approaches the same topics, but from probably a different side of politics. Yeah, this is really a bit of a kaleidoscope. There's some history ones that are thrown in there. There's some science stuff that gets in the mix. I find these days, like, podcast is just kind of, it's almost like a really easy way to absorb information.
I think it is, and the rise. It's almost a resurgence of podcasting, isn't it? We're talking here on a podcast. There are podcasts about everything, and it seemed to come and then go, but now it's wholly back. And unlike you, I cannot listen to a podcast on 2.5 speed. It just becomes like a absolute crazy thing for my head to listen to. I like to just enjoy it. I have to go to sleep with one. The long form ones I really enjoy listening to. It's but yeah, anything above normal speed is no good for me.
What I find actually probably the way that I'm discovering more of them these days is actually through YouTube, to be honest. There's so many podcasts that have kind of migrated across as video podcasts, for want of a better word. And as a result, like the YouTube algorithm is just constantly throwing new ones up, right? And so often you're not following a particular podcast, but it will just surface new ones, and you kind of, especially because of the autoplay feature, you end up listening to something that you may not necessarily have selected yourself.
Oh, the algorithm can get you, can't it? It's like I went down this rabbit hole recently. We watched Interstellar, the film, recently.
Oh, yeah.
It's, oh, man, what a film, by the way. Incredible. But I watched it because I thought the soundtrack's pretty good, so I'm going to put this on my YouTube. So I looked at that on the YouTube, and there's suddenly all these videos about time travel are popping up, and what's the fact behind Interstellar and Interstellar Explained. I was like, oh my God, I'm in this now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what a time to be alive when we can learn so much at our leisure, just become not experts, but certainly aware of things. And I think it really validates that purpose of podcasts. You want to have an interest in something. There you go. I mean, what a time it is to be alive. And you have a very successful YouTube channel. I mean, what kicked that? Where did that come from? I mean, tell the listeners who aren't familiar what it is, and tell us about the journey from it.
Yeah, so it's called Lubrication Explained. It very much does what it says on the tin. Where did it get started? It's a good question. So if you can cast your mind back to the COVID days, right? It feels like ancient history now. When we all kind of went into lockdown, I think everyone was struggling to figure out what to do with their time. Now, at the time, I was, let's say, for example, I was doing service work for customers of lubricants suppliers. And one thing that kept surfacing was that people always wanted training. People are kind of twiddling their thumbs. Hey, what would be really good while we're spending all this time at home? Can you run some online training sessions? Can you do, I don't know if you remember, but we were inundated with webinars at the time. And that's where the Zoom stock price just went absolutely through the roof and all that sort of stuff. And what I found was that I was just repeating myself over and over and over again because everyone wanted the same material. Let's do Lubes 101. Let's do fundamentals of base oils. Can you explain what a gear oil is? I thought, this is insane. Like, why do I keep doing this? Why don't I just record it and then put it somewhere centrally and then tell people where to go? And if they've got questions afterwards, I'm like more than happy to answer those questions face to face. So that was kind of the origin of it, really, was me wanting to do less work. And it sort of like took on a bit of a life of its own. And then obviously with YouTube, people start to put recommendations in the comment section. Hey, can you do a video on this? And it sort of just spiraled from there, to be honest.
So it was always not accidental, but it was to save you time. But time of recording, how many subscribers are on that channel now?
So 25,000, something like that. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And is it now part of what you do as almost like your business planning? Is it now a marketing tool for you as well, or is it started in COVID to help educate and inform? Is it now a piece that's driving awareness as well? Do people still come to you via YouTube?
Yeah, so I tend to find that people who I work with, right, generally how I kind of win business, for want of a better word, it is coming through YouTube/LinkedIn, right? So it's, hey, I saw a video that you put out on X subject. I thought I'd reach out. We've got this kind of problem that we're encountering in our workplace. Is it something that you can help with? So it has de facto become a way that people have come to know me. And fortunately, that means that I get a lot of inbound work, which is great because I'm a terrible salesperson. I cannot close to save my life. So I have the fortune of people coming to me rather than me having to go out to people. There's no real strategy, to be honest, to the YouTube channel. I think, I probably could be a little bit more tactical with it and the types of content that I develop and that sort of stuff. But at the moment, realistically, I just kind of make videos that I'm interested in and put them out and hope that other people are interested in them too.
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing is highlighting how buying has changed. Yeah, we'll touch on that a little bit during our conversation, I'm sure. But you said LinkedIn and YouTube are the drivers for inbound business. We observe it so often, but time and time again, people seem reluctant to believe it, or reluctant to adapt, or reluctant to trust it. But time and time again, even in the lubricant market, YouTube is driving a majority of business. It's staggering how the world shifted. It's I guess COVID triggered that almost, or didn't trigger it, rather it accelerated it, because the change was always coming, right?
Yeah, it definitely seemed to accelerate a lot of trends. It felt like, in COVID, a lot of trends that maybe would have taken 10 years got kind of pulled forward, and we saw a decade worth of progress in the space of a year. And some of that progress has been pulled back too, right? So let's say, for example, like the work from home mandates, that really accelerated, and then people have started to pull back on that. There's a lot of return to work mandates. So yeah, I think it accelerated trends that were already there. But the idea of, let's say, for example, social selling, or, brands using influencers online, I mean, that's been there for years, right? It's just accelerated. And I think, if you had to point to something, COVID was an accelerant, but honestly, probably something like the rise of TikTok, right, is probably a bigger driver behind it, because it's just reinforcing that kind of buying behavior.
Platforms pop up left, right, and center, and as we mentioned, like me, you've got young kids. I mean, are they all? Well, your 8-year-old, I guess, is all in, right? They are just, you can't get them off. Well, certainly mine. I can't get them off device.
We've done everything possible to keep them off. So, fortunately, depends on how you look at it. Maybe I'm a Luddite, and my daughter's going to be growing up in the dark ages, but she has zero idea of how to use the YouTube app, and so we're trying to keep her off it as much as possible. And that's partially because myself, I know I've got a bit of an addictive personality. I've probably passed it down to the kids. So if I give her that device, there's no way we're getting that thing back.
Yeah, so. That's not coming out of that room again.
Exactly.
We held off as long as we can, but our eldest now has his phone, and it is my God. I mean, you can't stop the tide. This is a trend that digital isn't going away. But I think with the rise, I was talking about it the other day, I think with the rise of AI, now you said in the introduction, your preference is face-to-face, your preference is call. I wonder if in a few years' time, that trend might shift back to almost like, I want to see you. I want a human to validate that you are who you say you are, because there's going to be some real trust issues around this AI. That's not innovation, is it? Revolution, because that isn't going. And I don't think I've seen a bigger shift since, I guess, social media was launched, how we communicate. AI, for me, I don't know about you, is going to change the way we communicate, research, and inform. What impact do you think it's going to have? Are you seeing it already?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to make predictions, right? Because the technology is moving so fast. It's almost impossible to kind of even project a month in the future, let alone what things are going to look like in 10 years. So that's probably something I struggle with a little bit. We're at the stage, I feel, we're kind of in the first innings. Use a baseball/cricket analogy, take your pick. Depends which continent you're on. But
yeah,
we're very much in the first innings, and at the moment, you kind of see the use cases, and you can tell when something's been written by AI, and it's a bit bland, and it's not very good. But at the same time, it's like everyone says, this is the worst it'll ever be. It only gets better from here. And so at the moment, I'm just using it as an accelerant, right? So Yeah, I've been very fortunate in starting the business that I've been able to jump on a bunch of different trends, right? So let's say, for example, like YouTube, I was able to jump on that. So, if I tried to start this same business 10 years ago, I have no idea how I would have gotten customers to come to me, right? So that's one trend. A second trend would be this AI stuff, where in the past, I probably would have had to start hiring people about now, but you can get so much done now because of the AI tools. It's able to abstract away a lot of like the menial tasks, and it means that I don't need to hire people. You can be ultra efficient. I mean, that's currently what I'm using it for, but it's easy to see a world where a lot of the activities that would typically have been done by either sales or technical, and as well as back office, start to kind of get subsumed by all of this AI stuff. And I think it'll also be interesting, like, looking at how does it affect different businesses in our industry? Because if you were to take a look at, let's say, for example, the big majors, the advantage that they have is they have a data advantage, right? These guys hold all the proprietary data, whether it's about the technology, whether it's about their customers, all of this data sits with them, and they'll be able to leverage that to train all the AI algorithms. So they've got a massive lead over small enterprise. But at the same time, because they have these huge IT infrastructures and they've got all these concerns about, cybersecurity and that, they can't be nimble and they can't try out all these new nascent AI tools as they kind of spring up. And that's where the small businesses can really run riot, because they can, take a bit of stuff from here and there, try it. If it doesn't work, they dump it. Right? It's very easy for them to be quite nimble. And so they have a structural advantage there. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and I see, Rafe, there appears to be, with AI, some really intrinsic trust. We just suddenly trust this machine to give us the right answer every time, to tell us the right thing to do every time. And I don't think, I use ChatGPT quite a lot, but it never tells you you're wrong. And I wonder if that's a bit of a risk, and if there is a bit of a trust issue around this, especially in technical, scientific, things where the consequence of it telling you something that's right that's actually not, there's real risk behind that. Is it something you're seeing as trust issues coming out? How do you think an industry might manage that?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, right. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of corporates have not immediately jumped on the bandwagon and a lot of them have issued kind of corporate edicts. You cannot use, let's say it's Notebook LM, at work, you can't use ChatGPT, all this stuff, because there's huge privacy concerns, right? The new DeepSeek model that just got released, people have no idea if, does that talk back to the Chinese government? Are there any backdoors there? And so there's all these unanswered questions, right, about how these models actually work. And that's kind of warranted, I think. So then it's like, how do you develop trust? And so that's something that I've been playing around a little bit with. Is there's plenty of out-of-the-box AI models where you can train it on a specific box of knowledge. So, I've been looking at what happens if I take all of my video content and feed it into an AI algorithm, and then you can ask questions of it, but it has bounds. So it will only give responses where I've given it information. And so it's not going to go and make stuff up the way that ChatGPT tends to when it's not able to refer back to its corpus of knowledge. So that's, I think, the kind of work that eventually we're all going to have to do, and we'll all have like little mini GPTs. Some of them will be more useful than others, and that's where some of this stuff becomes a bit of a data race, right? How much data can you assemble and train your own algorithms on?
Yeah, and how much of it stays private and how much does get into the public realm? I guess AI is only as clever as the information that it's available to see, right? And if you're just saying, go and find me something, it's going to search the whole world's information. Whereas I think what you reference is right. And I think those listening, if they're curious about AI, it's a great place to start. What do you want it to reference? You say, I'll feed it my video content. At least then I know that's me that said it in the first place. So only reference this. I think we have to put those guards in place, right? Because if not, it could be a right firefight.
Yeah, and I mean, in our industry, unfortunately, it has real world consequences, right? So if you let's say, for example, you have some kind of, ChatGPT-like experience that's making recommendations, and it hallucinates and gives the wrong recommendation for a very, very high-value gearbox, where does the responsibility for that lie, right? So you've got to be really careful about how these are used. And you can put, all the disclaimers on it. Hey, this has been trained on a certain corpus of knowledge. It might hallucinate. Make sure you check the answers and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think we are going to have to start kind of making, let's say, for example, specific tools for specific industries.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows the answers to it yet. I think from a service perspective, we dabble with it. We use it quite a lot. You're right. It stops you needing to take staff on, which is good and bad. It's bad for people ultimately, but it makes business more efficient. I think we have to guard against that and see how AI can help us rather than replace us. Because those that are using it quite a bit, I see they're desperately trying to almost work their way out of a job. It's like you're just telling the robot it can do everything you can do and have it help you instead. It's a mixed up world with it. It really is. Let's go back a little bit, Rafe. I wanted to get away from all this tech talk. You're a similar age to me, I imagine.
Yes, I'm 37 now.
Before tech, before social media. Yeah. How did you get into engineering? Take us way back. What is your story? I mean, obviously everyone knows the professional you. I want to know a little bit about you. What was growing up like in the young Britton household?
Yeah, so growing up, it was an interesting experience, I guess. So I was ostensibly an only child. I say ostensibly because I had two older half sisters, and I've also got a number of cousins who I basically consider my brothers and sisters. So I was both an only child, but also part of a big family at the same time. My dad passed away when I was 6, so I kind of grew up in a single parent household. We didn't, I would never say we were poor, but we certainly didn't have much. Not that I really kind of noticed. Had a pretty happy, otherwise pretty happy childhood. And I think probably the turning point, there's always like some kind of trigger, right, in every like little kid's life. And that for me was when Apollo 13 came out, which I believe was 1995. It was part of Tom Hanks's golden run, right? Because he did what it was like Philadelphia, I think, was in 92. And then was it Forrest Gump? Might have been in 93. And then I think he did Apollo 13 the following year. And then it might have been Saving Private Ryan the year after that. Anyway, he had this like run of about 4 years where it was just like hit after hit after hit. And anyway, Apollo 13, like just unbelievable movie. And from that point onwards, I was like, I want to be an aerospace engineer. I had like some aspirations to be an astronaut, but pretty soon my eyes kind of completely gave out on me. Like I'm pretty much functionally blind. So without glasses or contact lenses, I can't even see the eye test. So I always wanted to be an engineer. Turned out, fortunately, I was pretty good at sort of maths and science going through high school, and went to university as an aerospace engineer. That was a 5-year degree where I did aerospace engineering, also did a science degree majoring in physics, mostly theoretical, but there's a bit of applied physics as well. Turned out I was pretty good at those, but had the misfortune of graduating right in the middle of the financial crisis. So when I graduated, it was at the end of 2009, and like the aerospace and the aviation industry was just, there was nothing happening. So, when you're a young graduate, you'll take whatever you can get. So I just kind of like used the shotgun approach. I applied to every single engineering firm that I could think of. Hopefully it was mechanical, but I would apply basically anywhere. And I only ever got one response to my applications, which was from ExxonMobil for a position, and I ended up getting a position as a drilling engineer for them. Now, as it turns out, the thing that was difficult was that other friends of mine were getting either acceptance or rejection letters. I was just simply getting no response.
You were getting ghosted.
I was getting absolutely nothing. And I called a couple of firms afterwards just to say, hey, I never heard back from you. Like, what was the deal? Turns out there was a typo on my resume. And because my graduation ceremony was in 2010, even though I finished in 2009. So when they'd asked for year of graduation, I said 2010. So they all thought that I was applying for the following year, or I was applying for the internship program. So that is how I ended up in the oil and gas industry, is by typo.
What a happy accident.
Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, so then I was a drilling engineer with ExxonMobil for probably 7 or 8 years. I worked on a bunch of different projects, kind of all across the world. Drilling is a very different experience from the lubricants industry, right? So it is humongous amounts of capex. Like the amount you spend is just crazy, and it was almost like being in the military, right? You'd get sent out on assignments, and you would just work like an absolute dog. So, I was living in Papua New Guinea for 2.5 years. You'd go up to the rigs and you'd spend, 28 days straight working. And the days were 17, 18-hour days, and all you would do is just work and sleep. And it was, it was pretty rough work, but I really enjoyed it. But that was kind of like the sense that I got from the operations side, right? So I've kind of been, in a sense, on the side of the lubricants customer. So how I got into lubricants was almost another mistake, in so much as I'm not about to call my daughter a mistake here, but we found out that my wife was pregnant with our first child, and of course, if you're living in PNG, you're like, well, it'd be nice to have some kids at home, closer to the family. The Papua New Guinea project was wrapping up, and I didn't have that many options on the table. So I walked into my boss's office one day and I said, look, we had a really good relationship. And I said, look, I think my situation. I'm going to have to go and start applying for jobs. And he was very, very kind. And he said, look, definitely do that. He said, do not quit here until you come and talk to me first, though. Let me see what I can do. And I'll distinctly remember the day that he walked into my office. And you might have to bleep this bit out, but he said, look, I found you something. How do you feel about, and then he pulled his piece of paper out and he was like, how do you feel about being a lubrication engineer? And I said, what the fuck's a lubrication engineer? And he said, well, fuck if I know. And he said, but they'll keep you paid the same. And how do you feel? And I said, yep, you know what? Yes. If I could do that, I can work from home. Fantastic. And that's how I ended up in the lubes industry.
Wow. And what year was that then that you left the rigs?
2016. So I've now been in lubes for 8 years.
Yeah. And do you miss that? The very physical, hard yards, long shifts. Do you ever miss that? Do you ever look back on that and think that was proper graft? That's what I miss.
Look, I enjoyed the time while I was in it. You could not pay me enough money to go back. So I think the thing is, and actually my old team asked me to go back a couple of years ago because they were sort of restarting again. And I sort of said to them, you can't see it when you're on the inside, but you guys are on a treadmill and you are sprinting, right? Once you step off the treadmill, there is no way to get back on. I could not accelerate my life to the point where I could work that hard again. It's just, I would struggle to try and do it again.
I like the metaphor. And also like how you recognize the people along your way. The guy in the office, your boss at the time. Name check him if you want, but I think it's really nice to look back at those people, isn't it, and recognize that this was my sliding doors moment. This was my fork in the road, if you like, and your boss could have probably treated you a whole different way.
Yeah. He was Matt Tenney. He's still at ExxonMobil, but he was very, very generous for finding that for me because he certainly didn't have to.
And even going way back then, it sounds like your mother spent a lot of certainly your youth, sadly without your dad there, and what a job she must have done raising you. Was that over in Indonesia? Did you say?
No, so mum's from Indonesia, but she migrated to Australia. Actually, along with all her brothers and sisters, they all came across to do university, and then they all happened to marry Australians. So, my dad's English, but they married Anglo-Australians. So, interestingly, my entire generation is all half and half. So we're all mixed race.
Excellent. Do you know what? I think I remember on the Tom Hanks note. I think I remember going to see Apollo 13 at the cinema myself. And you're right, it was a I can never remember years, but you're right. Tom Hanks was the man back then, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly right. And then he sort of kind of went away for a little bit, and then he re-emerged. I don't know. He's
Came back with Castaway or something, didn't it?
Yeah.
Have you always then been creative? Because obviously you're engineering, you're obviously very well educated, a very smart guy. Do you still apply that as a business owner perspective as well? Are you always looking to push boundaries? Are you always looking for something new? Where are you at with your innovation as a business owner?
Yeah. So I wish I could say that there was like a grand strategy, that I have this vision of how I want the business to look. I wish I could say that that was it, right? Very calculated, and I'm using my brain power to figure all this out. The better analogy would be I'm a dog chasing cars. So very distractible. I see projects that I think would be interesting, and I dive in and I just do it. And sometimes commercially it works out really well, and sometimes it's a gigantic flop and it's a huge waste of time. But I had fun doing it, so it doesn't really matter. So, like an example of that would be the podcast, right? That I do. So it's probably a massive time waste, to be honest. But I have a really good time doing it, and I get to meet lots of people. So you might say commercially that makes no sense, but I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just nice to something that's not purposely connected to driving revenue. Having conversations where you're genuinely curious about the other person, I think there's something unique about that, and it probably plays back into the rise of podcasts. It's fascinating listening to people's stories when you approach it with genuine curiosity. I love it.
Yeah, and that goes the same for a lot of the side projects I do, even on the technical side. Sometimes I just do them for fun. Like I said, I'm a terrible salesperson, so I never charge enough. Yeah, again, there's no.
You call yourself a terrible salesperson, but I think you're quite an astute marketer, and I wanted to touch a little bit around that because I saw a post of yours recently on social media that suggested that you think the lubricant industry's got a marketing problem, and I want to understand more about what you mean by that, and where is that manifesting, and what risks do you think it faces? Big question, but let's see where we go with it.
Okay, lube industry has a marketing problem. I would say this is from the top down, right? Every aspect of our industry is terrible at marketing itself. And I mean that in a global sense, right? So at a 30,000 foot level, right? I think, when I told the story about getting the job as a lubrication engineer and having no idea what that is, right? That gives you a sense for, in the mind of our customer, they just don't care. Like, they don't care what we do. They don't know what we do. They don't know the value that we can bring. So there's a whole education piece that the industry as a whole needs to do to be able to better describe our value. Right? So that's at the very top. But then even when you look at the way that marketing is done by people offering services, people, the brands within the industry, it's garbage, right? It's a terrible experience. It's full of like just very bland corporate messaging, which, marketing's supposed to be fun, I think. You're explaining what you do to your customers. It should be engaging, right? It should be informative and educational. And I think we're just not doing a very good job of doing that. Like, so as an example, look at the technical data sheets, across every product that you can think of. That is, an essential customer touch point, right? That document gets used over and over and over again by your salespeople and your customers. And they could not be more bland, right? You read them, and number one, they're all terribly formatted. So none of these things are customer-centric. The customer goes to these documents, and what they want to know is what the product is, what it's for, and maybe some specs. That's all they care about. And we bury it in paragraphs of language and the features and the benefits. The customer doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff, right? So it's really from like the top down. We struggle to explain what we do, to our customers, and that's a pretty fundamental problem, for an industry that is very technical, and needs to kind of stand out in some way, right? To be able to demonstrate its value.
And if it doesn't, what risks does the industry face? If it doesn't get better at this, what's going to happen?
Yeah. So, well, there's a couple of different things. So, number one is what's already happening, is the commoditization of the entire market, right? So it's just a fight. It's just a race to the bottom on price, and that's probably the end consequence of it. Because if people see no differentiation between products, and they don't see value in, let's say, for example, the insight and the services that you could bring, then I should just buy the cheapest that exists.
What about talent from a talent perspective? We speak a lot. We've spoken to people on this podcast. We hear it quite a lot. Attraction, retention, it's a challenge. It's an aging industry, it seems. I don't know if you see differently. Storytelling. I know storytelling can seem it's almost a bit of waffle, but it's important. We have to tell it differently. And if we're not, if it just becomes, like you say, spreadsheets and here's another product and here's another catalog, it's like, well, come on. Why are you doing what you're doing? There's so many external risks and pressures on an industry. Who can take that baton and run with it? Where does it begin?
So I think this is like a really, really hard and almost intractable problem, because if you had to look at it, how do you attract talent? Number one, there is a bit of a branding issue around our industry, which is that people see us as part of the vertical petrochemical companies, right? And for better or for worse, whether you agree with it or not, that's been frowned upon by the younger generation. Now, the fact is, lubricants is, a recipient of petrochemical products, but we don't really do the same thing. And you actually see that, right, in the way that the majors are struggling in this industry, I would say, right? So if you think of the enormous majors, of which, I worked for one, I think the reason why they struggle in lubricants is because these companies are dominated by their upstream organizations. To give you an idea of like the difference in size, so when I was a drilling engineer, a typical well that I would be responsible for as a junior engineer, right? So you could think of it as like this, that's my budget for one well, was in the order of about 100 to 120 million US. And you would drill 3, maybe 4 of those a year. So we're getting into like a relatively young engineer could spend 300 to 500 million US dollars, in a year. You contrast that to lubricants, a sale of 100,000 US dollars can be a pretty big deal, right, to a lot of different companies. Maybe we're kind of getting into single to double digit millions at the most would be like a massive deal. So the scale, right, of these businesses is entirely different. Not only that, but the environment is completely different. So in the upstream model, it's all about control, right? They have best practices that have been honed over years and years and years. It's an operating environment which is very dangerous. So we apply a lot of safety controls. So everything is about control. Now, you try and take that into a sales environment, it doesn't work. Yeah, your salespeople need to have flexibility to sell in a way that your customer wants to be sold to, or that the customer needs. And so if you have inflexibility built into your business model, it doesn't work with lubricants. And I think that's why you see most of the majors basically kind of not divesting, but moving away a lot of their volume to their distributors, because their distributors are able to do that. And so there's that big distinction between an oil and gas company and a lubricants company. So that's one thing, is like just branding the industry. Beyond that, I think we could do a really good job of explaining what it is that we do. So one thing that I would love to be able to do, if some customers would let me, so let's say, for example, on the YouTube channel, is to be able to do almost like a how it's made type series, right? To be able to show you hey, where are lubricants used? On roller coaster rides and on, in the steel industry and in wind turbines and all that, because that to me is the attraction of the job, right? When I was a drilling engineer, it was a very specific job with a specific purpose, and I did a specific task. And that was cool and it was challenging and all that stuff, but it doesn't inspire your curiosity the way that the lubricants industry does, where you get to work across every single industry. If it moves, it has lubricant in it. And that to me is so awesome for young engineers who generally are naturally curious, right? They want to participate in that kind of stuff. And I don't think that we do a very good job of selling that as a big motivator behind getting people to get into the industry.
Well, I think what you highlight there is a great storytelling version of how it's made, the application, because people don't realize they just, like you say, bundle it all into this one bucket of this naughty industry. It's a bad industry. It's a negative industry. As you've just explained there, it is everywhere, across every walk of life. And I think if you grabbed that and told that story, I think it'd be phenomenal. I think it sounds to me like you've just found your next project, Rafe.
Well, that's the thing. To me, like, let's say, for example, and this is not for everyone, right? But the thrill of the job for me is in the unknown, right? So I could remember, let's say, for example, the one thing that sticks out to me was I remember a customer calling and saying, they've had, it was a customer in the forestry industry. We've had a breakdown on our debarker. Can you come help us with it and come fix it? And me trying to project all the confidence in the world. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll be in the car. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll get it fixed. Meanwhile, having absolutely no idea what a debarker is, right? Having to look it up on Google, find the manual for it, furiously read through it to figure out how the hell this thing works, discover that it is literally a like as in the logs go in and it literally strips the bark off the log. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Figure out how this thing works, which bit is broken, how can I assist? The thrill of that is, for me, is like addictive. And it's not for everyone, but I think there is a huge segment of engineers who would absolutely love that challenge, but are unaware that challenge exists.
Yeah, you're there to fix things. You're there to be curious, to like Apollo 13, to try and get people on the moon. It's the curiosity of and I know this is an audio podcast, but your physiology changed when you talk about debarking and how exciting that is. In terms of the thrill of the unknown, Rafe, what do you think the industry is going to be like in the next 3 to 5 years? What's happening? Crystal ball time.
Good question.
Is it a good time for the industry? Where are we going?
I think younger and potentially a little bit more digitally savvy. And I don't think that those two are necessarily linked. I think most of all, it's kind of going to get forced upon us, right? So there's a ton of incredibly experienced people that are on the verge of retirement. The number of conversations that I've had with people where, they've got a giant grin on their face. Oh, I've got 18 months left, right, until retirement. And you go, awesome. Are you passing down your knowledge to anyone? Because unfortunately, if you don't, that knowledge is going to be lost to the industry forever, right? So that to me is the big structural challenge of the next 5 years, is like, how do we preserve that knowledge? And is there any way of keeping these guys around, even if it's on a 1 to 2 day a week type contract, to keep them in touch, to mentor the next generation of people that are coming through? Can we make that maybe a more formal process? Because at the moment it's quite informal.
Even if their job is to educate the AI, give it the knowledge, train the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And I guess finally, Rafe, you said 2025 shaping up to be good. I think you're 2024, so it'll look positive. What's the outlook for you and the business this year? What are you excited about?
Yeah, a little bit more of the same, really. I'm kind of chasing. Yeah, I'm in a slightly privileged position in which, through the YouTube channel and through LinkedIn, I tend to get companies reach out and, hey, we've got this cool new technology. Can you take a look at it? What do you think? Now, there's a bit of an exercise in sort of like weeding out. There's some stuff which either isn't ready for prime time, or maybe it's not a good fit for me. But there's a couple of technologies which I think are really promising. So some, around sort of like additives. I know you spoke with Layla around Neo Copper. So I obviously do a bit of work with them. I do a bit of work with a company called Delta Zero on the filtration side. There's some online sensor stuff that I'm looking at. So that's all super exciting. And then part of it is almost formalizing some of the work that I've been doing in the past. So, up until this point, I'll have a customer from we'll call it, I don't know, mining industry, food manufacturing, whatever it is. Say, hey, can you come help us fix up our lubrication program? And up until this point, it's all up here, and I kind of go in and you can spot things to improve and upgrade. I've never really formalized the process, so I just built, for example, a bit of a self-assessment template that companies can take on, self-assess their lubrication program, and then we can sort of build it from the ground up. So I'm kind of excited about maybe some of that stuff to be able to make it a bit more of a system, so that it's a bit more, let's say, consistent and repeatable.
Yeah, and more on brand and on point with what you want to achieve, I guess. And it sounds exciting. Sounds really good. And Rafe, just finally, tell us where viewers, listeners, where can we connect with you if they're not already subscribed to your YouTube channel, which I'm sure many are. Where can we find that? Tell us, how can we connect and stay up to date?
Yeah, definitely. So all of the things. The YouTube channel is called Lubrication Explained. The podcast is called Lubrication Experts. There is a video version of that on the Lubrication Explained YouTube channel, so you wouldn't miss out. Definitely reach out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is nice because you can actually use the direct messaging. YouTube doesn't really have that function, and I always do like to talk to people. And then in person, right? I did say at the very beginning that in person was my preferred mode, right? Unfortunately, I live at the arse end of the world, where not much happens in the lubricants industry, because all the R&D and the cool technology development all tends to happen in Europe and America. So I will be going to both Lube Expos this year. So Lube Expo North America, which is coming up in Detroit, Lube Expo in Dusseldorf, I'll be there as well. So please come by. I'll have a booth at both of them. So stop by and say hi. And the other thing, if anyone is ever in Sydney, absolutely just reach out, because it's such a treat to have people in Sydney, like from our industry. It never happens.
Yeah, maybe one day, Rafe. I could do with topping up my tan.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Rafe, listen, it's been a pleasure chatting to you, and thank you for taking time out of your evening to do so. Really good to find out more about you as well, and thank you for being open and sharing as you did. I think it's a real good conversation. And thanks for being with us today. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Nah, cool. Thanks, Rob. Hey, I'm really loving what you guys are doing here, sort of sharing stories behind the people in our industry. So I think it's really cool.
We try and break down the barriers where we can, and people like yourself only make that happen. So yeah, it's credit to you and other guests as well. So appreciate that.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.